Recording now.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, Dr. Kole Odutola, thank you so much for joining me for this. Let me start by saying that I know that you have this habit of rejecting offhand, any appellation or title that seems to be very high. Okay. I know you to be a poet. I know you to be a writer. I know you to be an academic. I know you for several things, but so that I don't call you something that you don't want to be called now. Please, what are you right now?
Kole is fine. Kole is just fine, and but whatever you choose, it's your. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. But yeah, Dr. Kole Odutola, fine. Kole, fine. Whichever one floats your boat is what I would respond to.
Fantastic, fantastic. Tell me briefly, sir, your background.
Okay. Well, my background is like I started off at the University of Benin with a BSc in botany, and then I went on to Reading University in the UK for TV and video for development, which meant that we were using video in a different way, not for entertainment, but for development. And I crossed over to the States for another master's in organizational communication, learning, and design, which was actually called corporate communication. So I was like looking at two sides of community communication and then corporate communication. Of course, corporate communication was not my thing, but it was nice to know exactly what people do in boardrooms. And I remember then we were always told that communication should never be seen as a spare wheel, but it should be part of a driving wheel. So when I finished that, I proceeded on to a PhD in media studies. And all I was looking at in media studies was what people say online. It's just a part of my character that I love to listen into what people are saying. But in this case, I wanted to make sense of what they were saying. So I turned that into a project of asking the question, when Nigerians come online, what do they really discuss? One. Two, what is their take on this question of nationality and nationalism? Because once you are away from home, your nation becomes front and center about everything you discuss. You compare your nation to your host community and all that. So that was basically what I did in that. And after I finished the PhD, I started to teach Yoruba language. And I've taught Yoruba language here now since 2006, meaning that in the last 20 years, I have been teaching Yoruba language to foreigners. So that's my background in a nutshell, apart from the fact that I also try to express myself in poetry, in irreverent prose, which I titled Diary of a Lagos Bobo, which just allows me to say anything and everything I want to say.
Thank you very much. So, excuse me. So, what's your background in theater?
Okay. My background in theater is that I have been...
Because I know you, I know what you've done in theater, all that, but just for the record.
What I have really done in theater is not either in production, but I have been part of production teams, particularly doing documentation, photo documentation. I remember doing the Ajo production. I would take shots during the rehearsal and pass it on to the director. So they have a sense of the visual representation of what they were putting on stage. And I did that more for the rehearsals than for the production. And I would give to the actors, but it was the director himself that will find it and look at the special distribution of actors. And that now inspired me to start writing reviews of plays, because I understood it better from the rehearsal right down to the production. And sometimes I was allowed in to eavesdrop on the post-mortem of the production. So that was basically what I did. But long before then, I had walked up to the Center for Cultural Studies at Unilag, working with Bode Osoyin when he was going to put up Death and the King's Horseman. But before then, I had also worked with Larry Williams as his road manager, and we would go to satellites to rehearse, and then we took some of his productions on the road. I was his road manager then, trying to, look for shows and stuff. So that has been my involvement. But I would say that it is um, criticism that has been my forte to write reviews of different sorts.
Thank you. So, since your time in the US, have you been in touch? I know you have been in touch, but at what level have you been in touch with the theater in Nigeria?
Have I been in touch? I don't really. You see, my I call myself a hunter and gatherer of texts. So I go around collecting texts in different ways. The most recent I did was I was talking to somebody on WhatsApp, and I collected our conversation and made it into a two-man, one-act production, which will be an audio production very soon once I can find people who are willing to do the recording. I've just done one now with Godwin and Nosa, which a lot of people know as a Nemute. We just did one called BJ Meets Sandy, and it's just a fictional account of BJ meeting Olasende Arigbede in the heavenly places and talking about all the things they did. It's a very short um, production of 15 minutes, done with the very basics. There wasn't any frills and no bells and whistles, and the music was set by Kanayo Omo, the one who had done the production, the musical theater production that came to Nigeria. So, and then Grace Adinku, who teaches costume and production at Texas. She was the narrator of that one. So yeah, I have been amongst theater practitioners in Nigeria, and we've been talking. We've had a sit out, and the idea is to see how can we contribute, how can we extend what we do. We've done the same thing over and over again. It seems to be working, but it seems that it can work better. And that's where I stand. Let's look for ways in which some of the old things we've done can be better. So that's my involvement for now.
Well, as you know, this conversation we're having started from something you posted online, that you called a National Story Bank.
Yes.
And that excited me so much, really, until I got to you and you said it's still fictional, it's still in your head, actually. Please tell me about that. What exactly is it? What are you planning for it?
Okay. Because I started off in America at a place called Ithaca, upstate New York, where you have Cornell and where Biodun J4 used to be a teacher. And they used to have these little booths where people and their family can come and tell their story, and it will be recorded, and they will be given a copy and they will take away. So I wanted to extend that. What would it be if we got a set of theater graduates, people who have gone through the ranks and know their onions, to actually face families that have stories? And I tell you, in this Gainesville that I have lived, the kind of stories that I've heard from families is amazing. That some of it should be put on stage, some of it should be put on screen. And this was what inspired me to say, well, Nigeria is more than ripe for a storyboard, for a story bank, where people who want to be inspired can just go listen, read, and decide on what to do. Because Akinwumi Shola wrote some stories about the Alaafin, some of them. I mean, and I'm wondering, why have some of these things not been turned into stage performances or onto screen? Because some of them are so unbelievable, the kind of things and the conflicts. It has everything, characterization. So those are the background things in my mind that I think um, it's a very simple way is to throw the word out there and say if there's any family that want to talk about their parents or their grandparents in a way that it would capture who they are, and you can be fictionalized. It can be just about them. But you would, if you notice, when I was introducing myself, I talked about TV and video for development. No, these are the kind of things we do where we go to the grassroots. Anybody who is saying it's on YouTube, listening for real was what we did. It wasn't a play. It was just, you know, a, a performative and transformative encounter with, well, call them ordinary people. Well, they're people in Kenya. And they told their stories. And we have what is called the transect walk in um, TV and video for development, where the camera follows a person through their community, where they go and what they do there. And then the question will be raised, why don't you go to these other places? And that's where the story begins. You begin to see their interaction with their space will tell you a lot about who they are. And now if you flip to the story, the National Story Bank, it is almost the same thing, but in this case, it is simply just collecting. Let them tell their stories. Brothers and stuff and all of it. We used to have something called subject from objects, whereby you ask people, and I've done it in different places. I ask them to
Who are,
bring objects.
who are the we?
Huh?
Said we used to have. Who are the we?
Um, my set at Reading University, that's where it started. It was Reading that it started, where to say, what will be your entry point to the community? How do you ask people questions in a non-threatening way? Because once they see the mic, they think that they're on CNN, they're on NTA. How can you do the same thing without necessarily threatening them with that thing in their mouth? Let them just tell their story. And people people will bring things. People will bring things that they think is innocuous. That, oh yeah, this is just no, it's just an object. It is when they start to talk about the object that the whole idea of framing. When you see a photograph, what is in it is as good as what is not in it. Because if somebody brought a photograph of dad, grandma, and children, all right, so where's the mother? And so that's where the discussion starts from. Yeah, so these are ways of teasing out stories. You know that the Ajit prop, the community theater, popular theater tradition is not very interested in just entertaining. It actually wants to use theater as a means of development of communities and of people. A cathartic feeling of being a part of the story of their community, analyzing, into these two camps. Who are the exploiters and who are the exploited? And why are they being exploited? These are the things that will begin to bring stories. And it also generates its own conflict as well, but it is in the resolution of it, because it's always very political. It's in the resolution of it that the rubber meets the road. Are you willing to go the whole hog? If you have come in and you've gone to greet the ballet, and the ballet happens to be the real problem, so how do we resolve that? So that's, but the National Story Bank is based on all of these ideas to say people voluntarily should come and tell their stories. And we expect, if possible, to have two sides, to have brothers who are at war come and tell different sides of the story. And hey, that's what stories are about. And how do I envisage that would happen? It is more of publicity, of reaching out to people at the periphery of the city and people at the periphery of economic development. They are honest. They would tell you, and they don't think that you want to use them or use their head, to make money or research. But just that act of family members sitting around and telling their stories, laughing about it, and all of that. I think that we will get somewhere. We begin to tell stories that people want to listen to, people want to watch, people want to see, because it's coming from amongst them. That's what once the proscenium theater came and a writer had to go out, research, and do everything in terms of the words that are spoken. The alienation started to happen there because it was like somebody's play. But this one is our story, is us. You can feel yourself in it. You can see somebody in your community. Sometimes they would know them. Now, when it travels out of that cultural matrix, then it just becomes like any other play. Somebody was saying to me, "Oh, one of your characters was sounding like Sayinde instead of BJ." I said, "Well, there are people who don't even know these people at all. They don't even know how they sound. So once it travels outside of where knowledge is, they become characters. But these are real people and real stories that we want to share. And what is the lesson in it for others? The family for me is the very first knowledge institution. There's a lot to be learned. I teach a class on Yoruba families, and I say that's where you learn diplomacy. That's where you learn, how to defend yourself. That's how you actually first come in contact with people who have your love at heart. You can see it, you can feel it, and you know it. And that is supposed to represent your journey outside of family, to other institutions, how to pick your friends, how to know those who just want to come after your provisions. They just want to eat off you. But it's from the family you get that sense. And once you miss that lesson in the family, then you miss a lot. And the dysfunctionality in society, for me, can be traceable first to the family. So the whole story idea is, yes, how do we get families talking? How do we get friends who have gone through a lot? But the question you would ask me is, how do you find the people? True, I know. I know. How do I find the people? But you see, if you don't try,
Mm.
if you don't, just like I threw it out there and it caught your attention. And I have had one or two people say to me, "Kole, I'm in. Please send me the Zoom. I would like to be a part of it." Yes. Um, and then the consistency. If I begin, because it really looked, I got a lot of congratulations because people actually thought that I had gotten a job. So I had to tweak it a little to say I have made myself the director of communication. Well, that's the idea in a nutshell.
Thank you so much. How do you relate this to some kind of what I would call a trend that is like dominating Nigerian theater practice right now? I coined a phrase for it. I call it documentary theater,
Mm,
which is what I think in the last 7, 10 years, that's what has been happening. They're telling stories of dynasties. They're telling
mm,
stories of individuals who have made some name or money or some kind of mark in society. So how does this project you are initiating, or yes, or conceiving, how does that tie into what is happening right
Well, the big man history or the
now?
big man in history is always the one that has his, and then the big woman in history, they always have their stories told. Very fascinating because they're aspirational. Everybody at the margins of the economic pie would like to see what happened to the big men. And what you're talking about, most of them are, in quote, the big men in society, even the historical ones. It's like they were the ones single-handedly that changed the course of history. Whereas anytime you read the story of WNTV, you would know that there were some engineers that Awolowo just brought together and they conceived it and he supported it, or the Cocoa House. I don't think the man had an idea of how to build more than 10 stories, but he got people to do it. But is the story, are we telling the stories of those people? Are we telling the stories of what happened at their meeting? The greatest fascinating, let me digress a little bit. The greatest fascinating story to me is the conference that was held before human beings were created. I always get fascinated to say when they got to our mouth, how did they eventually resolve that this thing called teeth, so hard, will have a carpet that is so flimsy and it will be the tongue. And the tongue was there before the teeth. But my brother, if your tongue comes in the way of a teeth, you will be
I will
you
know.
will cry all day. But I'm sure they had a meeting with all of you. Can look at anybody parts and see what conference took place. So let me go back to your question that yes, there has been all, you call it documentary theater practice. I trace it all to the Woman King. Go and look at the Woman King and
What?
see Woman King,
Okay.
the film, the movie by Viola Davis. Go and look at it once it came and see how horses and slashing of heads when it started in all of these films. For me, Viola Davis was the one who let out the genie, and there's been a lot of support for it. Netflix has supported people riding horses and simply just cutting off heads and blood spilling and all, which never used to be. But that, again, is a story of a big man in history. Now, flip that to a totally unknown um, printer that I lived with. Lord Awo, we called him. Lord Awo, Lord Awo. It was what, until my brother just and he would call, once he said Lord, I would say, oh, Moya, and we enjoyed it. But he was a printer. It was from him that we learned how to collate. It was from him that when we put page 2, page 7, and 8, we would say it's somebody who is lucky that will get there. Now, would anybody be interested in Lord Owl's story? How he lived in this tenant space. How can that story be upgraded to a point that those who don't know him would like to listen to Lord Awo's story? He's not he's not a big man. Or would anybody be interested in Willie's story, Babatunde story, who went to the Biafra War? He went to the war front as a photographer for Morning Post. What he saw, what he did, and how that altered his mind when he came. Are these people? Do we really tell the story of all of these other people that we have around us? Are their stories as interesting? Will the story sell? And I have a feeling that something inside of me is saying, you're also talking about this new thing of having a story on Awolowo, MKO, Gowon, Sanusi, and all and all. Yeah, they are the ones that can pick the bill, and they're the ones that might fill the hall with their friends. But a society that flies with one wing will definitely crash one day if it is not crashing. when we don't tell the stories of the others, those people who do not have the opportunity to be heard. I know it's Spivak that talks about, can the subaltern speak? And that Wale Adeban, we said, yes, they can speak. They only speak with stones. But must we wait until when they throw stones? Yes, they speak, but they just speak with stones. And Nwafalabo Shoyinka did also say that the whole idea of a subaltern comes from the military. So they're not meant to speak anyway. Officers are men is what we call it. When you put all of this together, you want to ask yourself, how much of the downtrodden is reflected on our screens? Yes, Tunde Skelani's Mami, that was written by Femi Oshofison, had a different spin to it. The screenplay was a different thing entirely, But yeah, and it was referencing MKO and all of that. I don't know whether, but the setting of that was looking at the downtrodden in a very fictionalized way. I think the guy they call Sheikh of the theater, what's his name? His younger brother passed on not too long ago. If I remember, it's on the tip of my.
Oh, Sheikh, you mean the guy producing this documentary theater thing? Is that
No, 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 not that one. This
okay?
one was the one that produced a movie about prostitutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know. I know. We call it in those early days of Nollywood. It was called the Sheikh of because it turned out productions like that. He lived in Surulere. I know him very well. I worked with
Oh,
him. Yeah. Um, so yeah, he focused on the downtrodden, shedding light on what these people do, but they're fictionalized. And what I am thinking about is how can we really get the stories of people in different places, those who will never ever, even they don't even make it to the newspaper to be reported. Who cares? It takes too much effort to get the story of people who the society has relegated to the background. How do you tell their stories? How do you sell their stories? But beyond all of that, do we ever care of what it will do to them? Can you imagine a Baba Lagbede or Baba Laro who's been sitting in the theater and watching his family story being unfolded? It just gives a new spin to inclusion,
or
But
think about the survivors of the Morocco, you know,
that's another one,
you know.
But you see, I don't. You will notice that my examples, I try not to focus on the pathologies of a city.
Mm.
Makoko is a
Morocco.
result of one of the pathologies in the city. Wherever there's a city, there's a slum, and usually, they have slum tourism in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really not one who wants to tell, yeah, the survivors, yes, but I want to tell the story of that bicycle, that Babari Piara, who has seen children. He rented bicycle out to them in those days, and he saw them become bank managers. He saw them become, and he was still at his job, doing repair work for their children and their bikes. How do they contribute to society? Who are they? What led them there? Many of them came from, if you go to Tejo Oro,
Mm.
all those people who sell sell nails and
Born
building
now.
materials. Yes, they're there. you know. But I'm not talking of. It's easier. It's more economical to talk about the big men in our history, the Gowons of this world, the OBJ, and all. People will come, and corporate organizations will sponsor it. But maybe it is time to go back to the communities again and re-engineer our society from there. That somebody is watching and let the play be there. Let it play for 5 nights. Baba Karimu's story is going to be told tonight. And it's going to be told for 5 nights.
I'm going to come back to that person, but before I forget this one now, you started something about the translation of Oshofison's Mami.
Yes.
Screened by Tunde Kelani. That's a very, very interesting angle you brought to it. What was lost? What was gained in that translation?
Look, when I got to the University of Benin in 1981, Oshofison had just crossed from Ibadan. When I left in 1984, Oshofison was on his way back to Ibadan. So, I grew up. If you say those who got fed by Oshofison's productions and his power of telling stories, that Mami was a series that we all read. And every week it ended on such a high note that you were waiting. You couldn't look. Sunday had to come quickly, man. Why are you waiting? Let it come. Let's go and read Mami. And yeah. But when I saw the film, I didn't get that at all. It looks as if everything that made us want to see the next week had been totally removed. I don't know. Maybe that is the nature of text to screen. Maybe. But that was what happened. For me.
No.
I didn't quite get
get
that feel that I wanted from Mami.
What feel is this? That's what I'm talking about. What feel exactly?
No, that feel that made you sit on the edge of your chair every week as you read it.
Well, the Mami that was published in the newspapers as a series, is a different thing. I mean, Tunde Kelani was compressing everything into one story. So of course, the format is different entirely. I'm really concerned about the treatment of the story. For me, well, let's just make it a conversation. For me, the Mami of Tunde Kelani is more like some melodrama. About somebody who's that, just like you said, the pathology of the poor, as it were. It's quite different from the social, how do you call it, analysis that Oshofison was doing in that series entirely. So I thought that's where you're coming from.
Yeah, anybody who knows Oshofison will know there are two contending philosophies in his work. One is minimalist theater, to say that those without the wherewithal can also stage theater. You don't have to encumber the stage with props, people, their bodies, and the question of alienation, Bertolt Brecht, to say that, hey, we are players, we are like you, but we're here because there's an urgent matter to resolve, and let us resolve it. That is always Oshofison for you. The Brechtian theater, the idea that you can use cultural resources also to mobilize people. That's the way I see Oshofison. In all these productions, the Chattering and the Song, Anegide and the Night Watchman, Red is Freedom Road and stuff. It is more of a creative person looking for ways to get at the audience to be mobilized. It was a theater for conscientization, to say, don't always accept your lot. You see, in my days when I used to visit Odeomu, Dr. was saying that anybody would say that, Kole, don't believe those who say Ika Udogba. What you should ask them is that iṣẹ́ ìka tí ò dọ́gba ó yàtọ̀ síra wọn. That is, the unequalness of the fingers actually is the function that they have is why they are like that. So don't accept the fact that they tell you this idea of being in your place. This person has been made higher. No, that higher person economically is for a role, is to play a role within the concert. So that's the way I read Oshofison as well. That all of these stories, even the fat thing, he brings it down to say, don't just accept it like that. It serves a higher purpose than what you've been told. Sometimes you know that some of our wise sayings can be disempowering, but they always looked at other ways to say, how can we empower people that even as an economically marginalized people, do you know your role and function within society? Do you know that without you, the rich will crash? So when maybe I didn't watch, something just didn't hit me, because I had a higher, and that's the thing. Those who never read Oshofison or never, and there were 75% of those who watched the movies who didn't even know that it came from Oshofison. They were just seeing a film. I was not seeing a movie. I was seeing it through a particular lens, and that, of course, was not fun.
Okay. I'm sorry to keep you this longer. I
No
think
problem.
let's go back to that discussion of the documentary theater format. I know that you have also been in conversation with several theater artists in Nigeria about what exactly are we doing right or wrong to chase the audience out of the theater or to bring them back into the theater. Do you think this documentary theater format is a way in the right direction to bring the audience back into the theater?
That's I know exactly where that discussion went, because I'm not a statistician. I call it statistics. I don't have a head for the figures, but I have a head for qualitative, not quantitative, qualitative. And we have words like a listening survey. I would like to have a listening survey of why people come to the theater. We have something in participatory use of video that is called socialized viewing. That when people bunch together to watch something, the meaning they get from it. And I think Stanley Fish must also have talked about all of that. How when people bunch together, the text takes another meaning entirely. And it's been said that goers of theater in Nigeria do not just go there for entertainment. There is also the socialization aspect of it. I'm taking my girlfriend to a place and they look for a play that will help them. And like they say here, that the Hollywood movies you watch during winter, when young lovers cannot be in the parks, they are in the cinema. And the films they're watching are horror films. They choose it according to the times. They are horror movies that will make the girl screech, and you can hold her. Yes, and all of this play into the larger society. And that during summer, you want movies that the whole family can watch. I don't know what underlines our own release of movies or theater. Are we considering that because we seem not to be a periodized people, we don't have our fashion shows don't have winter collection. It doesn't have rainy season collection. It's just, all year round. So the fashion designers just produce all year round. The theater producers too, I think they just produce all year round. There are no things like taking care of a particular demography, but now we're beginning to hear through Bolanle Austin Peters that these screenagers want to come and they want to have their Instagram moments where they selfie themselves and their friends see them. And going to terra culture has now become an in thing, a status symbol. So how do we find out what the theater needs? When I started this campaign, NANTAP through Israel Ebo had invited me, and I said, one agency or a group of people should have what we call audience relations officers, just like we have customer relations officers. Customer relations officers don't wait for you to have a problem. You have come to the bank today. How was your experience? Da, 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 da. I hope you come again. Before the next product in the bank comes up, the customer relations officer are already telling you about it. It's the same thing. Do we have people, after you have watched the show, can now go back to say, what did you like about it? How did you hear about it? What were the things you saw? We don't have that yet. Well, maybe we do, because I get emails from Terra Culture, telling me about plays they're going to have, but there are no discussions. There's no. It's a one-way thing. They tell us, and we consume. We don't have a fanzine. Yes, like that. Theater should not have a conclusion. It should be something that we discuss. We agree. No, I don't like that character. No, I don't know who has tried it. Maybe Funke Akindele, but I don't know. But yeah, that's me. That how do you prepare a menu for people you don't even know what they like to eat? Oh, well, we are all part of them. We can guess. And if it has worked, why don't you just keep on using it by happenstance? But I just want, and nobody's interested in it because it always appears very academic. Academic in the sense that it probably might lead to grounded theory or what. But hey, so I just shut up. But I know that all is not well with the theater. I just cannot tell you that this is a solution. I don't have a solution. Go to the people is what I always say. Go to them. They will tell you. They don't even fear that you're using them for research. Our people are that generous. Or if you can't do it yourself, bring a white guy, a white PhD guy to come and do it. Everybody will talk to him, even the governor.
One, possibly last, hopefully. This theater we're talking about now, this theater of bringing the stories of great people, great individuals, nurses, and state. How does it compare to the theater that you grew up in? Working with Shofisa, working with Ben Tomoloju, Larry Williams, and all that. Theater that engages with issues, that engages with how does that compare at all? And if there's no comparison, where are we headed with this?
You know that Oshofisol was, I don't know whether it's still, driven by the fact that this is a rotten society and it should not remain so. So his analysis of society, right bank, and he chose the vehicle of expression. Expression in terms of prose, in terms of playwriting. Even he went to Kimba Launko to write things. Just that would he be able to conscientize, which is a very Marxist thing, that you do not build a toilet for a people who do not understand why a toilet has not been built before now, who do not understand their place in society. If you build it for them, you will be a mess because they wouldn't feel a part of it. So conscientization is a very important part if your goal is society. But as you know now, most of those I talk to and I deal with, they're over 50. They're in their 60s. This is not a time for experimentation at all. This is a time.
For them,
Eh?
for them, you mean? For them.
Yeah, once you've turned 50, doing something, many of them have put in 20, 30 years. This is the time they want to reap their labor. So the economy and the profit motive is the very first thing, is the very first rule of whatever they do. You know, once there's no money to be made, they're not interested. And I understand. What kind of experimentation are you going to start doing at that age? You know, the officers of this world started at a very early age, you know, and they remain, just like you will see that most fine artists in Nigeria remained in the cocoon of universities. They were getting paid and they were painting. You know, Kolade Oshinowo, Yusuf Grillo, or I don't even Odobrakweya. He was teaching at Greg's and stuff. So you made money, you acquired money from a steady thing, and then you did all of the things. But from the days of Basi in Anansa Playhouse, he was also working. But most of the kids that came to him had no job, had nothing. They had no work, nothing. They were depending on the fact that they would get a break in Lagos on the stage. And many of them did. Many of them did. There's no more such opportunities, you know, for mentorship and internship. Now, the risk is so high that you don't want to mess around at age 60. You want to be called from one set to another, grab your 1 million naira, go to another one and stuff. This is what matters now. I can sit here and pontificate about how the society can benefit. Kole, shut up. You are you are in a place where there's a power supply for 24 hours. Why would you be talking nonsense? I understand it truly. I don't begrudge, but somebody has to say it. And it doesn't mean because you have said it is going to be done. But the reality is that at that age, nobody wants to experiment. They want to look for winning formulas. Just go for it. The documentary theater is working for just one section. Just, I don't know how many people do it. Just very few do it. And he raises money, you know, easily because, again, he was an investment banker before he came to theater. And the three movers and shakers in the movie world all have something to do with law. Funke Akindele, Femi Adebayo, and our sister, Bolanle Austin Peters. They have something. If you leave the law people, you go to the bankers. You know, they've all worked in banks. Kunle Afalaye used to work in a bank before he left. But he also rests on a legacy that others don't have. You know, he rests on the fact that there's an Ade love. He has all the ledgers of his father, of how much the man paid people, how thorough he was. It's unbelievable when they saw all the things he wrote, his pre-production plans. And if you're talking about Ade Love's pre-production plan, somebody should go and open the books of Hubert Ogunde. You know, how detailed they were. But hey, really to your question is, I talk to them because I have this brainwave I don't know whether we can recreate even the days of Chuck Mike, of the performance theater. It was not a hugely commercial success, but it was one that put the theater again for the middle class. They had a place to go and watch. Those who had left universities and strolled in to the Oduduwa Hall or to the auditorium at Unilag, now we had somewhere to go. And then the theater graduates that were leaving, Godwin Enemute, Mama T, Richard Mufeda Mejo, they were working for John Pepper Clark. They had a place in those days. Do we have such places anymore where people take they're mentored, and now it's just like the guys who I knew in their 20s who I took pictures of in those days and couldn't pay me, you know, all the productions, and because they weren't paid themselves, but they needed all those pictures for their portfolio, and we provided that service. But the thing is, they've reached a point now where the little they have put together, the house rent they are paid for a year, they must look for the next year to make sure that they can pay the house rent. So that's where we are. That's the reality. So how do you talk experimentation with such people? I think it's foolhardy. It's well, my word, like I tell the students every time, is preposterous. I love that word very much. And I know it's so preposterous to ask people like that to experiment. But it's a chicken and the egg. Maybe but I can't see it drying out. So let them continue.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Tola. I really appreciate your time. In the course of this discussion, something came to my head, which may not find space in Ghana. It has to do with your not new, your switch into media for development, and your um, new area of Yoruba, pedagogy, as it were. We'll continue that on chat, maybe later today or something. I don't want to even put it on public space now. Okay. But before I release you, sir, quickly tell me, how did you get into Yoruba teaching, Yoruba culture and activism from all this, your diverse background, botany, media, and then full time. I think you said it somewhere, some time ago that you're full-time Yoruba teacher now.
Yes. Yes.
How did that happen?
That question is a question they're asking an immigrant. What do you do to survive? To be candid, especially in Europe and America, you don't come here with what you want to do. They give you what is available. And if you're sensible enough, go for it. Just stick with it. I tell people I have never worked one day with my PhD. I've never been paid as a PhD person in this country in the last 20 years. When I was doing my PhD, I could not afford it, of course. Why would I? Who was going to send me that kind of money, to go to school? So I was attached to the Yoruba Africana department, and there were a lot of children of the wealthy that had come. That young woman, Akabashorun Moyo, what's her name now? Yeah, I know it's Murayo Akabashorun, and her friends, they all came to Rutgers, and they came together to say, why can't they teach Yoruba since they were teaching Swahili? And I was stepping in at that time, and they would come to class with their friends. They had the greatest fun of their lives that somebody was teaching them Yoruba, and they would sing all those songs that their parents had, they've heard them sing, they would sing it in my class. And I was doing my PhD. And they were paying me as a PTL just enough to pay my fees. And then what was remaining was what I used in buying tickets from Newark to New Brunswick. So after my department, the School of Communication and Library Science, did not find any use. I was no use to them. I was constantly going to Africana Studies. So they said, well, let Africana Studies give you this scholarship. Africana Studies did not have money. So I kept at it. And then there was this announcement for this job. When the chair saw my resume, she called me aside and said, look, Kole, this is a non-tenure track job. Are you sure you want to do it? Because this your resume does not look like the kind of person we're with. I said, look at this woman. Do you know what I'm carrying? So, and even my immediate supervisor then, Professor Kemi, would say, are you sure you want to get this job? I said, hey, you don't know. I don't have any other thing. No. And so before I submitted my dissertation, I got this job. And there's been no looking back for 20 years. But I think I'm at a good point now to say thank you very much, Gainesville. It's been a lovely ride, to be here. But that's how I got into it. But the question you're asking, if reframed, is really how do immigrants survive when they're outside of their home? It has nothing to do with your background, the richness of your background, the diversity. It has everything to do with what they offer you. Take it or go back to Murtala Mohammed Airport.
Okay, thank you so much again, Doctor. I appreciate you. And like I said, we'll continue that discussion in the media and the Yoruba thing much later after.
No problem.
Thank you so much. I'm having
You're welcome.
You'll be able to sleep now.
Well, I have I produce. Let me stop this one. Okay.